cannot think any more deeply about it than understanding that SB 231 is an attack on Alabama's workers. And that's all there is to it.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
The final bill that we wanted to talk about was SB 231. That is a bill that would... all that you need to know, really, is that it adds an unnecessary barrier, another unnecessary barrier to unionization in the state of Alabama. And to go a little bit below the headline to fill in some of those gaps, what it would do is prohibit the state from giving subsidies to a company that voluntarily recognizes its workers' union. And the ostensibly, and of course they don't care about this. This is not real. And we'll talk about that in a second. But ostensibly, the concern is that there are these big, scary union thugs that are going around and coercing people to sign union authorization cards, and they don't actually want to unionize. And so we have to necessarily only have the secret ballot election is the only legitimate way to unionize. And so we want to disincentivize voluntary recognition and disincentivize, good, communication and collaboration between the workers and their employer through the unionization process. We want to disincentivize that. We want to make it as long and drawn out and adversarial as possible. That's basically what this bill does. And the reason that I say, there are multiple reasons that I say this is, they don't actually, the people who are pushing this bill do not actually care about the sanctity of a secret ballot election, is because, for one, there is already a process by which a worker who feels that there has been some untoward behavior in the collection of authorization cards, a worker who feels that way can already file a challenge with the National Labor Relations Board. They are already notified of their right to file said challenge during the voluntary recognition process. And Adam can speak to that, having just went through the voluntary recognition process himself. So there is a mechanism under the National Labor Relations Act to force an election over the voluntary recognition process if there is reason to suspect some of that coercive behavior is going on. Another reason that we can tell they don't actually care about that is because we have data. We can actually look, because coercing somebody into signing an authorization card is illegal in exactly the same way that it is illegal for an employer to intimidate a worker against unionization, to intimidate a worker by firing them or discriminating against them or retaliating against them for their union support. It's also illegal for a union to coerce somebody into signing a union authorization card. And so we have data on that. Unions file unfair labor practices all the time against employers, and sometimes there are unfair labor practices filed against unions for that behavior. But we can look at that, and overwhelmingly, people don't even file those unfair labor practices. There are no even allegations in the typical union election. There are not even allegations of union coercion. Okay, so that's number one. And then number two, even when there are allegations, they are found to be unfounded. They're not found to have substance. Whereas, in virtually every single union election, there are allegations of employer interference in the election process, in the unionization process, and those allegations are by and large found to have merit by judges, by people with expertise in labor law. We can take a look at the and then the idea that, they're just not filing it because they're so scared is another silly thing that you shouldn't believe, because of course anti-union workers would not only have their employer to back them up in a case like that, they would also have the entire apparatus of the union busting law firms and national right to work freaks and all the people like that. So the fact that they have this entire arsenal of boss resources behind them, anti-union workers, And there aren't even allegations in the vast majority of union elections. That should tell you that the myth of this union thuggery and coercion in the unionization process is just that. It's a myth. It's not true. It's not true, and we have the data for that. What this is, and also it's also worth noting that this is by and large, for either side, not consequential. By and large, for either side, not consequential. It's largely a symbolic fight because over the last 20 years, according to the Alabama AFL-CIO, Bryn Riley, there have only been 2 voluntary recognition processes in Alabama in the last 20 years, right? So there have only been 2 companies in the last 20 years who have voluntarily recognized their workers' union. Okay, so this is not really a big issue materially on either side, for the union side or for the boss's side. But what this is, the reason for it is just one more reason to attack workers in Alabama. One more reason to attack workers who are organizing with the UAW and try to bolster the propaganda on the Council of Bosses side against the UAW, because that way, if you get people talking about this, you get conservative propagandists talking about this on the radio or in statewide media outlets. That's one more way that they can slide in these lies about union thuggery and union coercion and things like this, and then one more instance for readers and listeners to take that in, right? And so it's just an avenue by which you can these lawmakers and the people behind them are attacking workers. It's class warfare, and it is insulting. It is absolutely insulting, and frankly, you should be insulted that this is the thing that they are taking, that they are making a priority. Making it a priority to try to end the virtually non-existent practice of voluntary recognition in the state of Alabama, a process by which, can smooth over labor relations and show that an employer wants to negotiate in good faith and deal with their workers in good faith as equals. They want to try to eliminate that virtually non-existent practice at the same time that we have employer lawlessness across the state, and particularly in the sector of relevance, the auto industry. We have seen time after time after time over just the last 2 years of these multinational foreign companies violating U.S. federal law, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, exposing workers to working conditions that are so dangerous as to be illegal, violating the National Labor Relations Act, illegally interfering with our right to organization, the Family and Medical Leave Act, illegally violating our right to protected leave in instances where I am undergoing major surgery or I have a family who's doing that, illegally withholding our right to that. Illegally violating the Equal Employment and Opportunity Act. I mean, all of these federal labor laws have all been violated by many of these companies, and that's an actual violation of the law. And you do not see these people coming in trying to ensure the integrity of, the election process by making sure that this behavior is punished, or trying to ensure the integrity of labor relations by ensuring that, law violators are punished. You don't see any of that because they're not neutrally concerned with ensuring that elections are fair or neutrally concerned with ensuring that workers are taken care of. They are singularly concerned with attacking working people. That's all this is. And that's all you should take it as. You should not think any more deeply about it than understanding that SB 231 is an attack on Alabama's workers. And that's all there is to it. Adam, was there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Well, yeah, actually, even though that is all there is to it, I do want to add some stuff to it. Just to kind of put some numbers to some of what you were saying. I found from the Economic Policy Institute that U.S. employers are charged with violating federal law in 41.5% of all union election campaigns. Now, this was from 2019, before organizing in Amazon and Starbucks really took off. So, if anything, I would imagine this number is significantly higher. They found that 1 out of 5 union election campaigns involves a charge that a worker was illegally fired for union activity. Employers are charged with making threats, engaging in surveillance activities, or harassing workers in nearly a third of all union election campaigns. Beyond this, there are many things employers can do legally to thwart union organizing. Employers spend roughly $340 million annually on quote-unquote union avoidance consultants to help them stave off union elections. This combination of illegal conduct and legal coercion has ensured that union elections are characterized by employer intimidation and in no way reflect the democratic process guaranteed by the National Labor Relations Act. So, all that to say, especially in the state of Alabama, a secret ballot NLRB election could hardly be considered a free, fair election. It's not a free, fair election. And so I want to speak briefly from the perspective of someone who has undergone voluntary recognition, right? I've experienced this phenomena that they're talking about. There are two main ways you can get a union, right? And I'm talking in the private sector that falls under the National Labor Relations Act. There are two pathways. There's the secret ballot election that most people know about, and there's the voluntary recognition. So the voluntary recognition is a process that allows the employer to recognize that a majority have already signed union authorization cards. Therefore, there's no need for an election, right? How it happened in my workplace is that people started talking. We had conversations. Next thing you know, we had an organizing committee. The organizing committee had one-on-one conversations with the rest of the staff, multiple rounds of conversations. We all talked, we listened, and we decided that we were going to be a union. And we all gathered together after, the course of this campaign, and we all decided, 14 out of 14 employees decided of their own free will to sign union authorization cards. And by the way, all 14 also signed membership authorization cards, right? Because you can vote yes to a union, you can sign yes to a union, and not even join the union, because it is a right to work state. But all 14 employees said yes to the union. All 14 said they wanted to become members of the union. And so what did we do? The next day, we met with our management, and we said, hey, here's what we did. We've got a stack here of 14 signed authorization cards, and we're a union now. And they were like, hey, that's cool. That's good. You obviously are. You've got the proof, right? Everyone's on board. Sounds like you have a union now. Well, let's work together and let's figure this out. Now, that is not the common employer response by any stretch, sadly. It could be, but it's not. And they want to disincentivize that sort of good behavior, because what good would it have done if our employer had forced a secret ballot election on us? It would have dragged the process out probably by another couple months at least. It would have given time to engage in anti-behavior. It would have just pissed people off, frankly. If we all signed cards and we still had to go through that process, in no way would that have been a more fair or democratic or transparent process. It would have been, unnecessary, costly, time-consuming, 100%. And so that was the experience of going through it. There was no coercion involved whatsoever. I'm like 110 pounds soaking wet. I don't think I'm like a scary union thug. No one was pressured by me to sign their cards. At most, and I explained this to someone yesterday, they were like, explain this whole like coercion thing that they think union folks are doing. I'm like, I don't really know, because the most coercion I've ever really encountered is peer pressure, right? The peer pressure that your peers are signing up and you haven't done it yet. And so maybe your coworker being like, hey, come on, man, you should join the union. That's probably about as coercive as it's going to get in most situations. I'm not going to pretend like there's not other situations and other behavior, but by and large, this is such a stacked deck against workers. It is a stacked deck against workers in Alabama. It is a stacked deck in terms of labor law, right? These elections are not free and fair. And my question is, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do this? It is a bill that it could be illegal. It frankly might be illegal in terms of its violation of our labor rights. We'll find out, but that's never stopped Alabama legislators before. They seem always eager to spend our tax dollars to defend against costly lawsuits and waste our taxpayer money. It would also force employers that have good relationships with unions to hurt those relationships. And they may be less inclined to come to Alabama. And, there are big companies like Microsoft that have decided to sign neutrality agreements, right? And are willing to take a little bit different approach. Maybe it's just for PR. Maybe it's just to please, progressive investors, whatever. It doesn't really matter what it's about. The reality is there are some companies that are willing to do voluntary recognition, and this would literally punish them and disincentivize them from doing so. And so my last thing about, why do we need to do this? Let's just be real. Alabama is one of the worst places to be a working class person in the developed world. These companies get away with lawlessness. The working people in this state are screwed. And then we have to pay for it with our own tax dollars, right? We pay for it. So not only are they getting away with screwing us, they're getting paid to do it through our incentives, through our tax write-offs, through our subsidies, right? Through the low-cost property rentals, whatever the situation may be. And so we already have flagrant violations of labor law, of child labor law, of worker safety law, of environmental law, right? That happens routinely. We already see massive union busting of the illegal and legal varieties, both with the companies themselves, but also their allies like Business Council of Alabama, all the way to the governor's mansion. So we already have all of this going on. Union density is only 7.5% in the state. You really got to add insult to injury? Is that what we're going to do? Just kick us while we're down? How much more can you take from us? I mean, how bad do you want things to be for working people in Alabama? It's ridiculous. And this is an opportunity for working people to stand up. This is an opportunity for union folks to unite. This is a clear attack on our rights to organize. This is a clear attack on the rights of businesses to have good relationships with unions. This is an attack on working people who want to make their lives better in the state of Alabama. And so this is an opportunity for us to all get engaged in this. There are lots of ways we can fight this. And I know, Jacob, you can chime in with anything I miss here, but we are encouraging folks to be in Montgomery next week. There is a Senate committee hearing at 3 o'clock on Wednesday. And so we plan to be there. We don't know if the bill will be before committee, but we're encouraging allies to be there. Will be an AFL-CIO roadkill barbecue that afternoon, so we're encouraging union members to lobby at the State House the day before. During the day before the barbecue. April 2nd, that Tuesday, is the RISE lobby day and the CWA's lobby day. So lots of opportunities for people power in the State House next week. If you can't make it to Montgomery, we need phone calls to senators, particularly senators on this committee. It's the Fiscal Responsibility and Economic Development Committee, the FRED committee. Lots of North Alabama folks are on this committee, including Tim Melson and Sam Gavan and Tom Butler. So if you're in our listening area, you probably fall under one of those districts, or you perhaps live in Senator Arthur Orr's district. We are encouraging folks to give phone calls to those folks and let them know how you feel about it. And if you can't make a phone call, at the very least, send an email. Preferably an original email. It's really easy to Google, find my Alabama legislator, plug in your address. You'll get connected to who they are. Send them an email at the very least within the next week, but phone calls are definitely better. If you can make it to Montgomery, that's great. There will be social media that you can share over the next week being put out by all sorts of folks. Definitely follow the North Alabama Area Labor Council on Facebook. Stay tuned to the Valley Labor Report. I encourage you to share our coverage of this legislation that we put out. I think the video came out just yesterday or day before. Again, you can share that with folks as well. We just got to get the word out. We got to educate folks. This is a good opportunity for us to fight the good fight.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Hey y'all, Adam Keller here with the Valley Labor Report. Sorry I couldn't be with you live on Saturday's program, but I'm reporting here on Friday, April 5th, with some thoughts about Senate Bill 231. That's the anti-union legislation from Senator Arthur Orr out of Decatur that is moving through our Alabama State Senate. I wanted to provide an update for folks and kind of remind folks where things stand with this bill and where things are moving. You'll remember that Senate Bill 231 is the anti-union legislation that has been shopped around from state to state, passed in Georgia recently, passed previously in Tennessee. It is brought by a group called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's a shadowy billionaire-backed group which fights against working people. And so Senator Arthur Orr has brought this bill to Alabama on behalf of corporate sponsors. And this week there was a hearing in the State Senate Committee, the Fiscal Responsibility and Economic Development Committee. You can, of course, go and find this committee hearing on the Alabama channel if you're so curious. It was Wednesday, and so we packed the committee room on Wednesday. There was a overflow of rank and file union workers, union members from a variety of unions across the state. Folks came from all over to pack the room all the way into the overflow, into the hallway. Was very proud to see the turnout. Lots of different unions, including CWA, UAW, the machinists, ironworkers, AFT. It was a good crowd of folks, a good diverse crowd of everyday working people. And we were all there to let our voice be heard and to ensure that folks in the state Senate saw there was opposition to Senate Bill 231. And I'm not sure they all expected that level of opposition, frankly. That's not a committee that has a ton of controversy, is my understanding. At least it's pretty uncommon for them to walk into a public hearing and it be totally packed like that. So they gave us the opportunity to sign up to speak. They cut our side off at 16. 16 of us signed up. We could have had more. So 16 of us signed up to speak against Senate Bill 231. The other side had 2 in favor. One out-of-state lobbyist from the Mackinac Center, which is another billionaire-backed, shadowy, sketchy, slimy group. This one out of Michigan is my understanding. As well as an individual from the builders and contractors. Right, so a slimy corporate out-of-state lobbyist, as well as a corporate lobbyist from some Alabama bosses. Once they realized the disparity in the speakers, the Senate committee chair and Senator Arthur Orr had a conversation. Arthur Orr placed a phone call. Shortly after that, a third individual, their name was written down as a proponent to speak. This one from the Alabama Policy Institute, yet another shadowy, sketchy, slimy, billionaire-backed outfit, which is fighting working people here in the state of Alabama. So Garland Gudger is the state senator in charge of this committee, and he announced that he would only allow 3 people to speak from each side. He said the committee was running late. They'd be there all night if we had to listen to everybody. And so he cut the speakers down to 3 for each side. He did not give our side time to caucus and actually pick who would be our 3 speakers. Now, we were strategic. We had planned speakers. We had people who signed up to speak who were in the order we wanted them to be in. But as you know, when you have a crowd of folks, you can't always control what everybody does, right? And so when it was our turn to speak, the first person who got up to the microphone was not someone who had consulted with the rest of us. And so that happens. I don't begrudge this person. I'm sure they did it with the best of intentions. But that's a friendly reminder to have movement discipline, y'all. If you're in a public hearing and the number of speakers is limited, you should probably know if you're one of the limited speakers. And if you were not, you should not take that opportunity. So that was unfortunate. It was really unfortunate, though, that Senator Gudger decided to limit the discussion and debate in that way. Senator Marika Coleman, a Democrat on the committee, did advocate for us. She made the point that people had driven from all over the state to be there. They wanted their voices heard. They were there for a public hearing. We are the public. But Senator Gudger said it was his committee and he was going to do what he wanted. So that's how it went. The corporate lobbyists, along with several legislators, spread quite a bit of misinformation, disinformation, just flat out lies about unions and about voluntary recognition and about NLRB elections and how all this works. It was very obvious to me that the legislators voting did not understand what they were voting on. Do not understand the difference between card check and ballot elections. Do not understand the process and how this works. Do not understand the realities of union organizing campaigns. Right? Senate Bill 231 would take incentives away from companies for voluntarily recognizing a union. And there are companies that do that. Right? They're going to be a little bit less likely to come to Alabama now if this bill passes. So this is interference with the private rights of businesses to make such decisions, right? If a company decides they want to recognize a union, that should be their choice, right? In fact, we should be incentivizing that choice. We should be doing the exact opposite of this bill. We should encourage companies through the use of state power to cooperate with their workforce, to collaborate with their workforce. Right? Because this reminds folks what a voluntary recognition is, what people are talking about when they say card check or voluntary recognition. They mean 50% of the employees, plus at least one more, have explicitly signed authorization cards with the union. And maybe they did it online, maybe they did it on paper, maybe they did it privately, maybe they did it with an organizer. However they did it, they made a private, personal choice to sign an authorization card expressly authorizing that union to be their union in that workplace, right? No coercion is necessary. No coercion is necessary. And we know the reality in union organizing. The coercion comes from the companies. Nearly half of all union elections feature labor law violations from the company. Nearly 1 out of 5 campaigns feature workers that are fired for organizing. And frankly, those are probably low estimates. Right? So when Senator Arthur Orr and some of the others talk about this bill as a means to prevent coercion, they're being dishonest. Because what they're promoting is coercion. What they're promoting is union busting. They want to drag out the process. They want to delay the process. They want to make it a more costly process to the taxpayers and to everyone involved. And they want to give the employer all the more reason to conduct anti-union campaigns and to coerce and intimidate and harass and fire employees. That's the message Senator Orr is sending to companies. That's what he wants them to do, clearly. So it's an attack on businesses and their rights. It's an attack on workers because, well, this is one of our federally, legally recognized paths to get a union, to win a union. And this seeks to take it away. Well, why do people join unions? Oh, yeah, just remember that union members, on average, make better pay, have better benefits, and have better working conditions. All right. So the lives of Alabama's constituents, by and large, are better with unionization. And that is what Senator Orr is standing against. Standing against his own constituents, organizing to make their lives and the lives of their family members better. So this big government overreach is likely illegal in that it preempts federal law and it takes away a right that is legally recognized. Whether it is or not, I can't say for certain. I'm not a lawyer. What I can say for certain is this will go to court. And Alabama's taxpayers will pay more money defending its legislation in the courts. So be prepared for that. So I was really disgusted at the way the hearing unfolded, the way there was so much misinformation being uttered, by the lack of respect for so many people, working people, who traveled to Montgomery to have their voice heard. The committee passed the bill 11-3 on straight party lines. Senator Sam Cavan did express some concerns about the bill as being an interference with the rights of businesses, but he did give it a favorable report. He seemed uncommitted for the the floor vote, so we'll see. We'll see how other Republican officials feel about this. One thing worth noting is that they amended the bill in committee to apply to local governments as well. And I've already heard that there are some local officials who are not too happy about that. County commissioners, city councilors, mayors, folks who may not even be very pro-union, frankly, but don't want to see their authority taken away by the state. They don't want to see their authority to develop their economy interfered with by the state legislature. So there's plenty of reasons to be opposed to Senate Bill 231. There's plenty of reasons to be upset at the way this is traveling through the legislature already. It is expected to be on the floor of the Senate on Tuesday, April 9th. I really encourage folks, if you can be in Montgomery at the State House that afternoon, Tuesday the 9th, you should be there. But if you can't make it to Montgomery, and many of us can't, please make some phone calls. Make some phone calls to your senator, and then make some phone calls to your members, your friends, your colleagues. Get other people to make these phone calls to their senators. We need overwhelming pressure. They need to feel the heat. Whether this passes or not, they need to know that Alabama's working class, Alabama's labor movement, that we won't go down without a fight. So they need to feel the pressure. We need people to be there Tuesday during the vote. We need people calling and emailing and visiting their senators in the days between. If we lose this fight on the Senate floor, we got to take it to the House. Try to beat it in House committee. Try to beat it on the floor of the House. We are running out of time for the legislative session. I believe there's only 11 days left, right? So we're running out of time, so we have to slow this down as much as we possibly can to run out the clock and beat this bad legislation. It's my hope that there are senators on Tuesday who will represent working people, who will represent their true constituents, represent the best interests of this state, and who will do all they can to ask questions, to speak the truth, to dispel the misinformation, to share real facts about unions and card check and voluntary recognition and about this law and the real consequences of this law. So that's my hope. I really appreciate all the folks who have been fighting this good fight so far. It's going to take more and more of us getting involved, getting engaged. It's going to take the entire Alabama labor movement getting involved to try to fight this legislation and send a message to our legislators in Montgomery that we're not going down without a fight. So that's all I have, y'all. Stay engaged. Call your senator. Stay tuned. We have to defeat Senate Bill 231. Solidarity, y'all.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.